actually just the beginning of stories that are going to be shown next week, the 21st and 22nd, 2 hours each night. So that is over here. Anyone would like to volunteer and give me your opinion? As a matter of fact, I have a reason to be more engaged. I have t-shirts for the ones that would like to give your opinion. Lupe? Guadalupe. Happy Guadalupe.
I thought you were talking to somebody else.
She's working on her English.
Would you like to make a comment?
I thought it was very impactful. I could relate a lot to a lot of the stories that they were giving, especially the Garcias. You know, I am from Puerto Rico, and you know, when I came to this country, I learned English, and it was very difficult. I also relate to the story from the people in Pennsylvania, where you grow up learning the language, and people automatically believe that you're from Mexico, and you grow up being called Mexican and so forth. But I thought it was extremely. I can't wait till see it next week, because I'd like to see the end with the stories.
Great, thank you.
See.
Suzanne? Suzanne is going to share.
Yes, I also relate to the several of the stories. I had to learn English when I came to this country. I had to go and pursue my residence and then my citizenship, although my father was American, but I was not registered, so it was kind of hard. But it is kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but the illegal part of the first part of the movie is kind of shocking, and see how many Mexicans or foreign people are illegal in this country. Even in Atlanta, you can see that everywhere you go, they are there. Now, the big problem we have is that they don't integrate. So if there is no education and the government doesn't recognize there is a problem, we are going to keep having all these health problems. I mean, the change on the government trying to assume the health and change everything, but the problem is right there. But I don't know what the solution is. I'm just mentioning it like you put it in the movie. But one of the big problems, I guess, as they say when one of the movies is education is the only way to get out of this.
Yeah, I like that point what she said. It was very, very important, because you know, I grew up in an atmosphere where it was you go to high school, and then afterwards you go to work. Even in high school I worked. Yeah, I was working when I was 15 years old. So you know, getting a weekly paycheck, you know, after school I went to work. After school I went to work. So and that was the mentality, and that's what you grow up in, and it's difficult to try to re-educate re-educate that into a person that's growing up, and even for somebody, for some of the stories that the young girl was talking about, where she felt obligated to go to work because she has a family. You know, it's not her family, but she feels like she's responsible to help her mom. I mean, and what kid is not going to help?
The vicious cycle too. You know, unfortunately, she's not going to be educated, and it's going to be trapped in the same loop. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in New York, and where Puerto Rican was the bad thing to be, you know, and so I remember my father's from Peru, my mother's from Puerto Rico. I remember how, you know, what they didn't want to say Puerto Rican. He said you were Spanish. Yes. And now I see, you know, Mexican is now that new bad word, and it's a shame. It's a shame, but I think I agree with your point about, you know, especially the church, where you had the Spanish Mass, and you know, in our church the same way, and there's no integration.
No.
And I think until you start integrating, whether it's in those meetings, to have some representation, they'll always be separate. And
I don't think they want to integrate. I deal a lot with them because for some reason I have a caregiver that is from Mexico, and I've been, you know, looking through, and then I have friends, and they don't care. It's not a problem to be illegal, and it's not a problem to speak English. They just don't care. And I think opinion, the problem is that they are not educated. So as long as they don't have an education, it's going to continue. And then in the Latin culture, the woman stays at home. The woman procreates kids, as many as they can, and the guy goes out to work. So that's why we have so many people not educated.
I don't know if it's a matter of not caring, but more maybe a matter of not feeling integrated and, I mean, basically fear of being rejected or just not accepted. I came here when I was young as well, but I mean, I spoke English and I'm from Honduras, so I'm not from Mexico or Puerto Rico. But when I came here, and that was in 7th grade, I had a lot of people calling me names and, derogatory names. So it was difficult because you don't feel accepted, and I mean, I came from being like top student there and having lots of friends to like, what's wrong with me now, So.
But I think it's a vicious cycle in terms of lack of education and then denied access to education further creates a lack of integration. Because my parents are Cuban, and it was always emphasized that education is first and foremost. You get as much education as possible because that is where the opportunity lies. And so when you talk about someone who's a housekeeper, she was probably denied access to education in her country, and then she comes here and she's denied access again for a variety of reasons, which is just, that's a whole other issue. So it just breeds a vicious cycle, I think, in terms of getting access to English. You can live in certain pockets of the community and never speak
Oh yes.
speak
Oh, yes.
English. I mean, I grew up speaking English, and then I came to Miami, and I lived in Miami with my family. Honestly,
You
there's
don't need
no
No
need to
need,
speak
yeah.
English.
No.
Whether you could have a full-time job, part-time job, everyone spoke Spanish. You went to doctors who were Spanish. It reminded me of Pico, but it was like 95% instead of 92%. So I think education on all levels, and unfortunately, the way the government is set up currently, it's education only, ongoing, higher education to U.S. residents or people who have access to money. Because ultimately, to elevate people, you need that.
Yes.
I think they did a nice job of portraying the personal side of this very complex issue. Where I think is lacking is on the economic impact that illegals have in this country. And this is a really fantastic movie that you have to see called A Day Without Mexicans. And it's a movie that shows what happens to the state of California when all the Mexicans leave the country and leave the state. And that's something that I felt was missing, perhaps, the significant impact that these 12 million people have in this country. I'm from Spain, so from different country from everyone. But in Spain, 3 years ago, they legalized 3 to 4 million immigrants from Morocco, a lot of them from South America, and so forth. And actually, it's helped the country. I mean, from an economic standpoint, and it's something that needs to be resolved. The status quo is no good,
Yes.
one way or the other. But they need to make a decision. And every year we keep talking about that. 10 years from now, we'll still be talking about the same issue,
They don't
and it
do
only gets
anything about
worse.
it, yes.
So something needs to be done.
It's like she said, it's not going to go away. We need to face, then we need to implement some. Laventia, you have something to say?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I immigrated from the Caribbean, and so it was really interesting to see the parallels. I came from Jamaica. I came here when I was 10 years old, and obviously they speak English in Jamaica, but I remember being teased because I had such a thick accent, and I didn't think I had an accent until I came here. So the parallels, and I think also the comments about focusing on education, I think there's some clear parallels, because in Jamaica it's such an important thing, and I remember coming to the U.S. and actually being disappointed, and when I came into a very mixed African American and Caribbean neighborhood, and I just was like, I remember being appalled when I first went to school, because you just never spoke back to teachers, and I remember being in school just shocked at the way that they carry themselves in the school. So it's been very interesting, but I think it should be pretty good. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm still looking forward, and I do believe that one of the things that Soledad mentioned is that we cannot lose focus. This is still a country in which we can have dreams and we can get out of this is by being educated, having more interaction among our communities. This isolation that we see, I see a lot also. I'm from Brazil. A Brazilian family moves to Atlanta, and there is Brazilian grocery store, Brazilian television. The neighborhood is made out of Brazilian small business, and they don't have to, connect to this wonderful culture, which is the American culture. So I think that the example that they show, when you can assimilate some of this good of the new culture, we can all, live a better life, So I'm looking forward to the show myself as well. And if you don't have one of the bags that they gave us, please pick up one in here. And I think, have you and,
All righty.
thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.